Welcome to Session 19 of the series, An Introduction to the Divine Principle. In this session, we are going to look more closely at the second coming of the Messiah. In the previous session, we revealed that the time for the second coming was just after the conclusion of World War I. Through that war, the Central Powers in the position of Cain attempted to dominate the Allies in the position of Abel, but failed. Instead, they submitted, and in 1919 signed the treaty at Versailles. This set the foundation for God to send the Messiah into the world. But those who take the words of Scripture literally will have a hard time to believe that the second coming of the Messiah has already taken place. They are expecting the Messiah to come back with great power, descending from heaven on the clouds. They also believe that those who are faithful to him will fly up to meet him in the sky, that the evil world will be destroyed, and a new heaven and a new earth will be created. But not all of the Bible is meant to be taken literally. The visions that prophets received were often expressed in symbols and metaphors. In John 16:25, Jesus said that he himself used symbols, but that in the future their meaning would become known. I have said this to you in figures, but the hour is coming when I will no longer speak to you in figures, but tell you plainly of the Father. Let's take a closer look beyond the symbolism to see what Scripture is really telling us about the second coming of the Messiah. What is interesting is that the Bible gives two prophecies concerning the coming of Jesus, and again, the same two prophecies concerning the second coming. One prophecy states that he will come from heaven, and the other that he will be born of a woman. Before Jesus was born, the prophet Daniel, in Daniel 7:13, predicted that the Messiah would come with the clouds of heaven. But in Isaiah 9:6 it says he will be born as a baby. One of these is to be taken literally, and the other for its symbolic significance. In the case of Jesus, we know from the accounts of his birth that he was literally born of Mary. This means that the prophecy of him descending with the clouds of heaven was symbolic and was intended to reveal the significance of his birth, that he did not come from the lineage of this fallen world, but belonged to heaven, that he was born the Son of God. Sadly, according to John 6:41-42, those who believe that the Messiah must literally come down from heaven use that as a justification to reject Jesus. If we look at the second coming of the Messiah, we find the same two prophecies. In Matthew 24:30, it says, he will come with the clouds of heaven. But in Revelations 12:5, it says that he will be born of a woman. If we are willing to learn from the lessons of Scripture, and if we don't want to make the same mistake as those who wrongly judged Jesus, we have to conclude that the Messiah is going to come again, not appearing in the clouds, but born of a woman. However, like Jesus, he will be blessed by heaven, standing in the position of God's Son. Actually, this concept that the second coming will be fulfilled by another person does not originate with Reverend Moon. This insight was revealed to us by Jesus in Matthew 17:11 and 12, when he explained to his disciples the meaning of the second coming of Elijah. Elijah was a prophet who lived hundreds of years before Jesus. His mission was to prepare the people for the Messiah, but he was not successful and was taken up into heaven. Later, in Malachi 4:5, God revealed that this Elijah would come a second time in order to prepare for the Messiah. What does this mean? How could Elijah come and work on the earth again after being gone for so many hundreds of years? In Matthew 17, Jesus gives us the answer to this question. First, Jesus confirmed that Elijah was to return. Then he explained that Elijah's mission and his second coming were fulfilled by another person, and that other person, according to Jesus, was John the Baptist. John was Elijah, in the sense that he carried on Elijah's mission. This is why John's father, in Luke 1:17, was told by an angel that John would go forth in the spirit and power of Elijah. Through this lesson, we can understand that the mission that Jesus initiated on this earth to establish God's original ideal will be fulfilled by another person, someone who is not Jesus, but is called by Jesus to complete his mission. Does this mean that Jesus' promise that he would return is not true? No, not at all. Jesus himself will return, and in fact has returned many times since his resurrection. This type of return is a spiritual phenomenon, in which Jesus, sometimes visibly and sometimes invisibly, comes to people in his heavenly form, the form that he took after he resurrected. This happened when Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene outside the tomb. It happened when he appeared to the disciples in the upper room. It happened when he appeared to Stephen, the first Christian martyr. It happened when he called St. Paul to his mission. And it has happened countless times throughout Christian history. According to Jesus, his return or presence can happen any time 2 or 3 gather together in his name. But this type of second coming, the actual return of Jesus, although it is important because it strengthens the faith of believers, cannot restore what was lost in the fall. It cannot restore God's original ideal of creation, the ideal family of true love centered on God. This explains why, even though Jesus has returned and has been present with us over the past 2,000 years, the world continues to be dominated by sin. This also explains why the Messiah must come again, born in the flesh, able to take a bride, and able to create a family through which all people will be able to return to God. This is why, in Romans 8:23, St. Paul said, "We ourselves, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, groan inwardly as we wait for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies." The good news that we want to share with you is that the time has finally come when the doorway through which all people can be adopted into God's family and can actually realize God's ideal, not just in heaven, but in our bodies on this earth, is now open. Thank you for your participation in this lesson. In the next session, we are going to ask the question, who could the Messiah be?